Hey, it's Jeff Zito, and thanks again for checking out another episode of Celebrity Jobber, which you can stream on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, leave a review. Past episodes can be heard on celebrityjobber.com. And check out our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/celebrityjobber. This episode's a little bit different because not one, but two guests from the same show. I've been a big fan of the Impractical Jokers for the last few years. If you don't know anything about them, they're lifelong friends who met in high school, had other jobs before they formed a comedy troupe and ended up getting a TV show. We'll find out what they did before the show, what their big break was, and of course, what their first job was. James Murray, a.k.a. Murr, and Brian Quinn, a.k.a. Q, both my guests this week on Celebrity Jobber.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, give a 5-star rating, and leave a review. Check out all our past episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you pod. What if these celebrities weren't famous? What would they have become? What was their first job? We're about to find out.
Hey, Murr.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm awesome, man.
It's got to be like a dream come true for you, no? Like, you meet your buddies in high school, you're clowning around, pull my finger, doing crazy shit, and then all of a sudden you're making a living at it, and a good one at that.
A dream come true, but partly a nightmare.
Okay.
I mean, my friend, I've been thrown out of an airplane on TV. I've had my nipples pierced. I've had 4 prostate exams at this point. I've got a tattoo forcibly put on my body of a ferret skydiving. I've had my eyebrows shaved, Novocaine injected into my body against my will, and so I was a blabbering idiot. I mean, the list goes on. You watch the show.
Well, fair enough. And I have to tell you, the best episode of all time is your boyhood crush on Winnie Cooper, and you had to oil yourself up and interview her. Oh my God.
Yeah, great for you. It's horrifying for me. There's literally my life before and after that moment.
I can't believe you're celebrating 10 years. Can you take us back all the way back to when you first met the guys in high school?
Sure. It's actually 10 seasons, and we start shooting season 11 today after this interview.
Wow.
I leave for set. It's actually been 14 years of making the TV show.
Unbelievable. Wow.
I met the guys freshman year, first day. At Senior Farrell High School in 1990. We became best friends. I met them all in religion class. We were like studying the Beatitudes.
Right. and when did this whole thing come about, where you guys are like kind of videotaping, pranking people and stuff like that?
We always did this. I mean, we went to all boys Catholic high school. There was nothing to do other than prank each other, So it was like ingrained in our DNA from an early age. And then we just decided to start filming it. And that's what sold Impractical Jokers. That's it, man. It's
just an incredible story, and because a lot of people see your story and they go, "Oh my gosh, like this is great." They're hanging out with their friends, but But you did say it is a little nightmarish with all the different things that you had to go through. What about your parents? What did they do for work?
Oh my God, so much different. My mother raised my sisters and I, and my father was a stockbroker. Like, he left for work, took the subway and the ferry into the city in a suit and a tie and a briefcase. Completely the opposite of what we do. We're like a very serious but very, very funny man,
But what did he have to say, or mom had to say, when you were like, okay, guys, I'm gonna move into this career where I'm kind of doing pranks with Q and Joe and Sal? Were they supportive? Were they on your case a little bit about that?
My mother, since I was a kid, wanted me to be a podiatrist, solely because she had absolutely terrible feet. She just wanted free podiatry work, And I think my father was hoping I'd go into business or something, but I kind of did go into business when you think about it.
No, you did.
They grew. They grew to love the show. They loved it immediately because they loved the guys. The guys are just the best guys you'll ever meet. You know what I mean? So they were very supportive always.
What was your major when you went to Georgetown?
I was an English and marketing major.
And what did you think you were going to do with that degree when you got out of school?
Georgetown couldn't help me at all with that, but it was a great school. I loved it. But I always thought I was going to go into, I thought I was going to go into TV or film.
Oh, you did?
Or writing, and that's what I did.
Well, 2 questions. What was your first job out of college? And then I want to know what your first job ever was.
My first job out of college was unemployed.
Okay.
I really rose up to my unemployed career well. Like, I had no benefits. I had, the commute was great.
Right.
My first job ever, I worked at Party City, which is a party, store, with Joe Gatto. Him and I were employees there, summer of whatever it was. And he was like the MVP salesman, and I got fired because Party City has those tall aisles where you put boxes on top for storage, and I pushed a whole giant box of red Solo cups onto the top, and I pushed it too far, and it fell over onto the other side of the aisle, and it hit a woman in the head, and it fired me.
Well, good thing it didn't happen in this day because people are very litigious now. Even though red Solo cup, she'd probably be suing, and maybe me and you wouldn't be talking right now.
She becomes heiress to the red Solo cup empire.
What were you doing right before you went to be a Joker full time? Did you have a regular job?
Yeah, I actually had gotten pretty far. I ran development. I was the SVP of development for the TV company that makes Impractical Jokers, and I did that for like 10 years, and kind of rose up in my career of TV development, pitching and selling TV shows, to eventually, with the guys, pitch and sell Impractical Jokers. And then the show took off, and I had to eventually leave that job, but I loved it. I did that for a decade. Yeah,
and you're still kind of involved. I mean, because that company that you worked for is now making your TV show. So you're kind of still involved, no?
1,000%. We still pitch TV shows together all the time,
That's awesome. Now tell me, I don't think the dynamic has changed since Joe left the show, but tell us why Joe chose to leave. Did things just get a little too hectic for him?
I'll let Joe answer that question when you interview him. That being said, we're still best friends. And I mean, so much so that, 2 weeks ago, the guys and I surprised the audience and popped on stage at his show. He was doing a sold-out show at the Beacon Theater in New York City, and as a surprise to the audience, he takes a couple questions at the end, and one of the questions he gets are the guys and I still best friends? And he goes, why don't you ask them? And we walked on stage, and the crowd went crazy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Joe, when you talk to him, but yeah, I mean, still my best friend. I just FaceTimed him 2 days ago. He's in Australia on tour right now.
That's awesome. Tell me, what do you think it was, Murr? Like a series of things that happened for you, but like, can you tell me about like your big break? Because I can tell you, for as long as I've been watching the show and you've been coming to the city that I've been working in, the venues have gotten larger and larger and larger. So was there a particular moment that things really kind of snapped and took off for you?
By the way, you're in Tampa, right?
I am.
We're performing at the Hard Rock in Tampa in like a few weeks for their March 24th.
Yes.
At the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino,
I am very well aware of it, and I'm going to be there.
Are you for real?
I'm absolutely going to be there. My wife's a big fan. I'm a big fan. I figure that'd be a great night to be there.
Awesome, man. Yeah, by the way, people get their tickets at ImpracticalJokersLive.com. I would say, in answer to your question, the moment for me was, the tour is what made it feel real to me. Like, as you said, like, we were playing comedy clubs, we sell out immediately. Then we were playing small theaters and larger theaters. And then I remember the night we played Madison Square Garden, and I came out of the subway, because I took the subway to the garden. Right. And the side of the garden said Impractical Jokers sold out, and I literally had tears streaming down my face. Because I remember doing a show 15 years ago in New York City, and 2 people bought tickets to see the show. I mean, we were, hopefully we've gotten a little bit better along the way, but I remember that night. And I think the tour is what kind of made it feel different for us.
Well, look, congrats. You guys are great. It's, you got a whole channel pretty much devoted to you, which is great because every time I turn on True TV, the Jokers are on. So they're starting their 11th season on True TV. And as Murr just mentioned, the guys are doing a small tour, kind of not a tour, but there is a few dates in Florida between March and June and in Tampa. playing at the Hard Rock. That's March 24th. I look forward to meeting you guys, man.
You too, buddy. New episodes of Impractical Jokers every Thursday night on True TV and TBS. Tomorrow night's episode is on TBS, actually. And then we're, brand new episodes all throughout the spring.
Can you tell me about a couple of the guests real quick before I let you go? A few guests can you tell me about this year?
I mean, dude, this week is Kim Fields, if you remember her from the Facts of Life.
Of course.
Another show on now. We have Alf as a guest this season. Alf, no joke. We got, in 2 weeks, I Lose an Episode, and Roy Wood Jr., the comedian, is on the show, and he helped us punish me, and they made me be in a convertible at a drive-thru at a White Castle in the Bronx, but the guys control the horn. So every time I pull up behind cars in the drive-thru, they started leaning on the horn, and it was chaos, man. I almost got my you-know-what handed to me.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'll see you in about a month.
You got it. Sounds good. Thanks, buddy.
So before the Impractical Jokers, Murr actually worked for a company that pitched TV shows, TV development, and he ended up getting a deal with that company for his own show, Impractical Jokers. He said his mom always wanted him to be a podiatrist because she had ugly feet. Not to mention when he got out of Georgetown, he was unemployed, but his very first job, Party City, with Joe Gatto, a former cast member of Impractical Jokers. He said he cried when he saw, the Impractical Jokers name on the marquee at Madison Square Garden. I think that's when he said he felt like it all happened for him. I don't know if that was his big break, but that's when he felt like he made it. Really funny guy. So now we're off to our second guest from Impractical Jokers. My wife's actually a big fan of his podcast, which is called Tell 'Em Steve Dave. Brian Quinn, or as you know him as Q, is our guest now on Celebrity Jobber.
Okay, great. Well, we're way ahead of schedule, right?
Yeah, not for long. Hey, Q.
Uh-oh.
What's up, man?
How's it going, bro?
Pretty good. I guess I have to start off. I've been instructed to say a few things to you. I have to start off by telling you my wife is an aunt, okay?
All right. Excellent.
I don't know, and I don't listen to Tell 'Em Steve Dave. I hear about it all the time secondhand. I don't think she's into comic books, and I'm not sure if the podcast is solely about comic books, but I think she got into you guys from Comic Book Men, which is a show that you did for a while, and became a huge fan, and she said to me today, tell Q that your wife's an aunt. So I said, okay, what I got to look this up.
Those are. We have a saying on Tell 'Em Steve Dave that no one's special. We're all just ants in the anthill. So we call ourselves ants.
How did you get involved with that podcast? Did it kind of spawn from Comic Book Men?
No. Actually, that podcast has been around. It's going to be 15 years soon. I started working for Kevin Smith, the wonderful film director, longtime friend, when I was 19. And Tell 'Em Steve Dave is a podcast that sort of emerged out of that culture that he had built at the time, the Viewer Skewniverse. And Brian and Walt, who I do Tell 'Em Steve Dave with all this time, are in Kevin's movies, or in the bulk of Kevin's movies.
Right.
Two characters kind of over and over again. So, and I was working for Kevin, and when they started the podcast, I was like, I'll help out. And then that turned into me being on it. And here we are, and all these years later, your wife is a fan. But it's a fun podcast. I don't think you'd go wrong listening to it if you want. Join your wife.
I got to also tell you this, too, that she says that me and you kind of look very similar, so I got to tell you, you're a very handsome man.
Yeah, I was about to say, it sounds like she has good taste in podcasts and men. So you married a keeper there, my friend.
So you mentioned that, first of all, I'm very impressed that the podcast is 15 years old, because podcasting 15 years ago was not a thing. It was only a very select few that were doing it. So with that being said, and knowing that you probably weren't making a whole lot of cash doing it 15 years ago, what made you want to start a podcast?
I always wanted to do radio.
Really?
I loved radio. Yeah, I loved radio. I always wanted to kind of do something in radio. And when podcasting came out, you're right. No, I remember the days where I had to explain to everybody. Some of my friends now who have like 3 podcasts, I remember explaining to them, being like, it's like a radio show, but it's on the internet. It was the best way to describe it back then. And I just loved it. I always loved talk radio. I always loved the format. Like, I was always a big Howard Stern guy. So it just felt like I was part of that world, which I loved.
And you were mentioning that when you were 19 years old, you worked for Kevin Smith. Can you tell me a little bit about what were you doing for him?
Yeah, sure. I was started as an intern at his company. He would decide to start accepting internships to like try and pay back a little bit to the next generation. And I was lucky enough to be selected when I was 19. And man, it's been a journey. I've been involved with Kevin and that crew ever since. And I'm 47. So those guys have been a part of my life for a long time. So at first I was an intern, and then Kevin started doing like merchandise. Kevin was way ahead of the game on the internet. He was interacting with fans before anybody else, and merchandising. Like he started a whole merch company that, unfortunately he hired a 19-year-old idiot to run it. So we had some growing pains in the beginning, but we turned it into a really like kind of successful business. And when you're working at that company, you're kind of like whatever needs to be done gets done. So if you wanted to start a film festival, we helped out with that. It was just like a great time of my life. Like he would produce these low-budget movies like Big Helium Dog and Dogma, and I was 21, and he'd be like, all right, you're the casting director on it. And like, you just did
Wow.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a really special time of my life. So I love those guys.
And then obviously you make you make a point to talk about it, a lot during Impractical Jokers, which, by the way, I am a big fan of the Jokers, and you talk a lot about your previous life as a firefighter in New York City. And how old were you when you became a firefighter, and how long were you?
Sure. I was actually a little on the older side. I got on when I was 28, which doesn't sound old to guys like us now, but like when you're going through it, all the guys, most of the guys are like in their early 20s, and they called me the old man in the fire academy. Yeah, and I did that for about 8 years at Ladder 86 here on Staten Island, and loved it. And then the first 2 seasons of Impractical Jokers, I was still working in the firehouse. So I would go to the set, I would shoot during the day, then I'd go to the firehouse, work an overnight shift, then go back to set the next morning, shoot, then go back to the firehouse, do an overnight shift, then go back to set. There were times where I was working like legit, like 4 days in a row straight with no break. It was a pretty crazy time.
You had a TV show and you're still working as a firefighter for 2 years?
Oh my God, dude. Yeah, I'll tell you right now, we got paid, like our first season salary for this show was, this is writing, performing, producing, everything. We got like $3,000 an episode.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The budget was so low. And, we were so unknown, and True TV was such a low-budget network at the time that it's literally all they could afford. So it wasn't like, we were like, we hit the money, we retired. It was very much like a labor. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'll take $3,000. I love $3,000 like everybody else. But like, it's not life-changing. It's like buy a car money, not like, not even like I bought a cheap Wrangler,
Hey, nothing wrong with that. I drive a Jeep Wrangler. Look at all this that we have in common. Jesus Christ.
I still drive one. My car right now is a 2018. Yeah.
Right on. What was it? When was it when that $3,000, obviously those days are long gone for you. What was it? When was it? Like when you noticed, wow, holy shit, we've made it. Because I remember watching you guys for a long time, and I'd see you come through town, small venue, smaller venue, or, a little bit bigger venue, a little bit bigger venue. So you've progressed over the years from small venues to big venues. But at what point in time were you like, oh man, I think we did it. I think we hit something here.
Yeah, it was really the touring that drove that feeling, because like there's certainly a point when you leave your house where it goes from, you could just have a beer and enjoy yourself, to some people coming up to you and being like, oh man, are you that guy from TV? You know what I mean? Stuff like that. To like every time you go out of the house, people are excited to see you. You know what I mean?
Right.
There's that natural journey. But really for that, there's like the touring, because you just nailed it. Like we were playing like Whitey's, a pool hall in the middle of the country, which shout out to Whitey's. I actually haven't thought of him in years. And, it's a pool hall. And they're cramming 200 people in, but it's sold out. And like, it was like it sold out in like a minute. And they're like, oh, we go to a bigger place. And then a bigger. And then suddenly like you find you see the audience growing and being excited to be there. And you're interacting with them. Because after the show, we'd go out with them. We'd be like, we're going to the bar across the street. And it was a real, you just saw it growing and growing. And then you find yourself like, we're doing it again. May 5th, we're playing Radio City. The first time we played Radio City was like, who am I, man? Where am I? You know what I mean? And then that turns into Madison Square Garden. So it's just like a progression that I think we've been really good at, me and my friends, at accepting it as it comes. Like, because some people I met, will get just a big head about it. It's like, of course I'm playing MSG. And I don't think that has happened to me, my friends. Like, we've been very good about every step being like, we cannot believe that this is happening. And even now, we started shooting season 11 yesterday. And you get on set and like, you're like, here are all my friends. The crew's been with us 10 years. Like, the immense gratitude we have for everything going on has never gone away with the four of us, which is pretty, because we're a band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we're a band, and like we love each other. Like, Joe left the show, but I talk to Joe every day. I love Joe. I don't have hard feelings against Joe. He just played the Beacon Theater. We came out on stage with him and stuff like that. It's the incredible gratitude that we have is I don't know. It's pretty great. Sorry, I don't know how I got on that tangent.
What was your very first job, Brian?
My very first job was on Sand Lane in Staten Island. And it opened in the 1930s, was this small amusement park called Sand Lane Amusements. And it was great as a kid. They had like carnival games. It was permanent. It didn't move, but it had carnival games and a small roller coaster that I would scrape and repaint when the summer came. And I was a ride operator there. And I remembered going there as a kid. And then when I started working there, I was like 16, 17. That was my first job at Sand Lane. I was a ride operator at this little rinky-dink amusement park that they later tore down and built some townhouses on top of. But that was my first job, and I loved it. I really did.
It was great talking to you. I'm looking forward to seeing you March 24th, by the way, the Hard Rock in Tampa. Would love gonna come see you guys there, and of course shooting their 11th season of the Impractical Jokers on True TV Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Really pleasure talking to you, man, and I look forward to seeing you in about a month or so.
Thank you. Yeah, me too. And then please tell your wife I said thanks for listening to the podcast. That's always my favorite thing to hear, the Tell Steve Dave stuff. So thank you.
Absolutely. We'll see you soon. Thanks again.
Cheers.
All right. So he kind of said the same thing as Murr as far as when he thought that the Jokers actually made it. They were touring for all these years. They started off in, small venues. He said just a couple of people showed up in the first show that they did, or one of the first shows that they did. And through the years, I remember being in Fort Myers, Florida, where they played a small little theater, and then it grew, and then it got into multiple nights. And now we're talking about Madison Square Garden. I mean, these guys definitely saw their success through touring. Okay. Q's first job at an amusement park where he was a ride operator. Had a lot of jobs. I thought that was pretty interesting. He worked for the fire department when the Impractical Jokers show was on TV. I thought that was crazy. But he said they were only making a few bucks from the TV show at the time. He also had a job working as an intern initially for Kevin Smith. He's a filmmaker from New Jersey, Chasing Amy, Dogma, and of course, the cult classic Clerks. So when he was 19 years old, Brian was working for Kevin Smith's company, became friends with him over the years, and the podcast. I found it fascinating that Q always wanted to be in radio. He said radio interested him. So the podcast was like doing a radio show on the internet. Sure. But really ahead of his time with podcasting. It's been around for a minute, but he started his podcast 15 years ago. And back then, it really wasn't a thing. Really cool guys. The show, Impractical Jokers, hilarious, true TV, new episodes, new season, going on right now. I really had a good time taping this episode. Those guys, Murr and Q, lots of fun, obviously. And I'm going to see them when they come. You can see if they're coming anywhere near you at impracticaljokerslive.com. They are on the road a lot through this summer. So thanks again for listening to another episode of Celebrity Jobber. Please don't forget to subscribe wherever you stream your podcasts, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we're on all of them. So subscribe. We'd love a 5-star rating. Leave a review. Past episodes on celebrityjobber.com. Thank you so much for listening. Until next week, I'm Jeff Zito.